welcome to the fifth in the series of Dialogues Around Death and the Three Principles. Today, my guest is Julian Freeman, who I got to know on a Jamie Smart Inner Circle, and we spent quite a few weekends sitting next to each other, talking to each other, and getting to know each other. And Julian has also written a book, which I can thoroughly recommend. It's called Life Beyond Money, Living to Earn or Yearning to Live. I've been reading it for the last few days, and I'm absolutely entranced with it. I'm entranced with the way Julian writes. He writes straight from the heart, and he's totally honest about stuff that's happened in his life. And I found myself the other morning, having read it with my leisurely cup of tea in bed on a Sunday morning, getting up and suddenly feeling hugely upset, and actually standing in the shower and crying my eyes out. And I just thought, okay, this is interesting. And then I started to realise that some stuff that I'd been holding on to and had a big story about, actually, from some years ago, had bubbled up to the surface and kind of gone, I don't need that anymore. And it was just a letting go. And you know, I love understanding, or having some understanding of the three principles, and knowing not to do anything, knowing not to poke around in it or to wonder, why am I sad? I shouldn't be sad. It's a beautiful Sunday morning, etc., etc. Just, okay, I'm sad. Something's come up. That's fine. I can be with this. And it passed. And whatever it was, I have no idea now. So, Julian, I want to thank you for that insight that I had just, from reading your book. And we were just talking. I said, Julian, I don't know what I'm going to say when I introduce you, because that book has, really moved me. And I know that you've been studying three principles for a few years now. So I guess the best way for me to introduce you is to ask you to introduce yourself. So welcome to the call, Julian.
Thank you very much. How did I come to the principles? That's a good one, and it fits with the book, actually, because my life changed when my mum got ill, and I was 48, and I'd spent my whole life kind of working through in a very outside-in fashion, I suppose, looking back at it now, and reasonably successful, nice family, two lovely kids, and doing well. But it's that old Sid Banks thing of, do you like the way you feel about the way you're living your life? And I didn't. I absolutely didn't enjoy. I remember having a call with Jamie Smart in end of 2011, where he said, how could 2012 be an adventure for you? And I was like, well, it won't be. It'll just be another year of hard graft and, doing the stuff that I do, and that's the way life is. And the words life sentence kind of came up in my mind. I thought, no, surely life's not like that. And when I was, as I said, 48, my mum, who looked after us, supported us, been everything for my brother and me for 48 years, was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And she chose us. She wasn't big, didn't have a big circle of friends and family, etc. And she chose us, me and my brother, and another lady to be on her team to help her with her, with a fight, a battle against cancer. And for the next 9 months, we did exactly that. And it was. This is going to be a very long answer to your question. It might take an hour, but it was really amazing time. I mean, because for me, she'd given us 48 years of her life, in the most amazing way. I mean, how much giving did she was always there for me, always, never not there, and it was my chance to be her supporter. Do you know what I mean? And so I kind of took on that with really in a really positive way. It's like I can kind of pay back in some small way for everything she's done. And she was really grateful to have us round her, and the quality of the relationship that we had. Now, I always say this, I wouldn't wish those circumstances on anybody, because cancer is a horrible thing, the treatment for cancer is a horrible thing, but the quality of the relationship that we had was amazing, really good. We spent more time together, obviously, because my brother did like four days a week, and I did 3 days a week with her, and so on. So that's kind of it's obvious, rather than what we did before, which is occasionally get together and call regularly, etc. We were together every week, for days every week, and there was stuff that she relied on me to do, and stuff that she relied on my brother to do, and we supported her through her illness, and it was all. That felt really good. We were all working together on this thing, and yeah, no, I don't miss. I think that it was perfect. I can't think of another way. If those circumstances were to arise, I can't think of another way to do it. And then she got quite bad. It was interesting. I went to Jamaica with my dad for a week, and my brother looked after her. She got quite bad while we were away, and I actually, it was one of those classic moments where I went to Jamaica, but my thinking went with me, and so it wasn't actually you're in paradise, but you're not having that kind of a time. And it wasn't just about her. I think I just felt that because I was trying to hold up running a business and stuff, and a family, and look after my mum at the same time. So the whole thing was a bit, in quite a lot of flux. But I think that's quite important. I mean, obviously I was coming up to a big change in my life, which the book is which largely what the book is about, and it's. So when you try and accelerate or decelerate to a stop in this case, you create lots of forces occur in your life, and so it was only natural it would be like that, I think, and I think a lot of people. I don't think it's only me that experiences that kind of before a change. It just so happened that my mum's death was like the big catalyst for my change, and. My mum had always been a dog lover, and it was amazing. We had 6 dogs at one point when I lived with her, and she always had a minimum of 2. And what happened was that as soon as one of them died, magically within a couple of weeks, another one would appear. Even one time, a stray turned up at our front door, and he sat there for 2 days, 3 days, until my mum took him in. And he stayed with her for another 6 or 8 years after that, and it was a lovely dog. But the other thing she always did was, when their quality of life started to suffer, she would go and confab with the vets, and if there was something they could do, they'd do it. And if there wasn't something they could do, then that was it. She'd have them put down, and because it's like, no, if they can't have quality of life, that's it. It's no point. So we got to the stage with her illness where she got moved to a hospice, and she started to talk to the doctors about what was possible, and they started to say what was possible, and it was not what she wanted. So I kind of knew in advance that she would do, because of the way she. I mean, it sounds silly maybe, but the way she thought about the dogs, because she loved her dogs, and she wouldn't want them treated badly, and I think so the same about herself. When they kind of started explaining what was possible, she was like, "No, enough already." And she got us each in turn on her team and had the conversation with us. I've decided that this is what we're going to do now, blah blah blah. And I have to say that was probably the most amazing conversation I've had with anybody in my life. I mean, the love. She didn't my mum wasn't a great one for saying I love you. You know, we weren't physical. We weren't a very physical family, etc. But you know what the principle's about? It's always about listening for that feeling underneath. The love was always there, and never more in that than in that conversation. And I really treasure that. That was really amazing. So I didn't mind at all that she wanted, you know, she felt like she had to apologise for making the decision she'd made and so on. And I was like, no, that's what you want to do. That's right. You do that. And then we stayed with her for the next 3 days. And then there was a period after that where, you know, obviously you have to get into organising people coming and going and arrangements for this, that, and the other. But the amazing thing there is you get this, and I've seen it recently because somebody else who's a friend of mine, who their dad died, and as opposed to this period of real flux that I had before, when people actually kind of get very close to and die, that moment, there's nothing else going on. There's a complete stillness, and you don't think about anything else. Now, interestingly, you talked when the bit before we came on air about the sailing stuff in the book and the sailing analogies. And one of the things I love about sailing is that when you go sailing, the only thing you're thinking about is the wind and the waves and the boat, like the basics, the elements. You're coming back to nature, and all the rest of it, what's going on in the world and all that other thinking just goes away. So in that place of, you know, death, for want of, you know, it is the right term, for want of a better term, in that moment of death, there is, in that stillness, there's huge power, massive power. And what it said for me was, my mum asked me the seminal question: are you making a living or are you living a life? And that was a huge question. And just like when we got to the, you know, she was diagnosed, you get that moment where, so are you going to carry on running your business or are you going to go look after your mum? It's like, well, that's a no-brainer. I'm going to go look after my mum. And with this question too, it was like, well, that's a no-brainer. It's about living a life. So wisdom, you know, places like that are places where, whether you've got this understanding or not, they're just real opportunities for people to see life differently. And I haven't to this day, I don't think, done what they call grieving for my mum. I don't feel like she's gone. I mean, I can't physically pick up the phone and have the conversation with her or go visit her. But everything that we did, I just don't feel like she's, you know, not with me. I don't know. I've got no evidence for that, I suppose. But I got some trust. I mean, if we're all part of something bigger, then she's still part of that, whether she might not have a physical body. And I remember going to see that, you know, the nurses after she died, the nurses arranged her beautifully in her bed, etc. And I remember going to see her, and there was a little rose on the pillow by her head and so on. And I just knew in that moment that that was just a physical body. That wasn't my mum anymore. And so I've kind of seen that, but I know my mum is somewhere. I know she's there. She connects with me when the time is right. And I think that's a great place to be. I think a lot of people, it's interesting the contrast, because a lot of people are quite frightened about death. My dad is very worried about his health, very concerned about his health, and I probably, you know, this is my view about him. It's not his view about him, maybe. And my grandfather managed to live to the ripe old age of 92. So my dad goes, well, I've got to make it at least past him. And I don't think that way, actually. I don't think that way because I don't. And maybe it goes something to do with this sense of that my mum's still with me. But I, when I was 50, I put up Clive Lloyd on my Facebook page because I think like it's like cricket. When you get to 50, you're like, when you're a batsman, you're trying to stay in. When you get to 50, there's the time to start playing your shots, Only the difference for me is it doesn't matter if you get shot, if you play your shot and you get out, because you get to play again, is my view. I don't know how or where, but I just got that feeling that the game's not over, And that means that I'm not really worried about it. It doesn't worry me about it in the same way as it does my dad. Interesting how two minds, two different realities, isn't it? But so back to your original question. So after my mum died, and I'd had this question, are you living a life? So I needed to I had this sense of I needed to find my own direction because I'd been heading in a particular path for many years. And I went to the NLP conference and I found, or Jamie Smart found me, or wisdom brought us together, or whichever way you want to put that. And he was just really going public with his whole 3 principles, with his globe that went from cloudy to clear and so on, clear mind. And I thought, and something about it went, no, this is the right thing to be doing. So I sat down with him, and then I joined the inner circle, and started that January. And by March, I'd had this stunning realization, which was that everybody has an inner compass. Everybody knows what's the right direction for them, and I certainly did. And what had happened to me was I'd been traveling in a direction that wasn't my natural direction. So I'd kind of just put the compass away. You've got something reversing there. So I put the compass away and wasn't listening to it. And as soon as I took the compass out and started listening to it, which was the most natural direction for me to head with my life, I went, wow, it's like 90 degrees from where I'm headed. Yeah, exactly. So then began kind of changing quite a lot of stuff in my life. And that, along with deepening my understanding of the principles, because of course I think you get the principles. There isn't much content to the principles. You can get the principles in a weekend, in a 2-hour discussion. I don't know. Some people get it very fast, but for me, the biggest issue, and I've heard this said about the school. The 3 Principles School is it's not about learning something, it's about unlearning stuff. And what's in my book, the second part of my book, is me struggling to unlearn stuff. Is me struggling to intellectually get where I'm going when there is no intellectually. Nothing is intellect. It's all about just following that compass and where it leads. So, and I didn't even intend to write a book. I think I've got a little video on my website, Stars of Wellbeing, somewhere, where I call it, I think it's Unplanning. Because I wrote, have you heard of Julia Cameron? She does this thing called The Artist's Way.
Yes, I have.
It's about discovering your own creativity. And she has this thing in it where she talks about writing. One of the things you do every day is you write pages. You write 3 pages of A4, longhand, with a pen. You're not allowed to cross anything out. Those are the only rules. So you get to page 1, and you write all of the stuff that's obvious for you in the moment. It's the stuff that's at the top of your head, and the things you've got to do today, etc. You get to page 2, you start to have that thinking about, well, what else is there to write? And then you're kind of struggling. And then you get to page 3, and some interesting stuff starts to appear on the page. And I think that's her whole, that's probably it. You don't need to do any of the rest of her exercises. Just do the pages, and you'll uncover your creativity. Well, that's what happened for me, anyway. And I don't know if it's something about Wordsworth or Lord Tennyson or somebody who said very famously that I sit down to write at 9:30 and inspiration arrives at 9:35, something like that. And for me, I was then able to. I could feel something bubbling up inside me, and I just sat down and wrote. And I wrote like 32 different pieces during the course of the 2 years of my journey. From my mum's death onwards, I wrote all those pieces, and then I didn't really know what was going on. And also, here's another funny thing. Back to the controlling and not controlling or going with the flow. I thought if I was going to write my book, it would be on the veranda of some safari lodge in Botswana. I'd sit there for 6 weeks and write. It'd be beautiful. Well, I wrote the book as you read it probably in the book. I wrote it on the 8:23 from Stourbridge Junction to London Marylebone, because that was like a 2-hour, 40-minute period I had regularly that was just my time. And I could have switched on the Wi-Fi and done something worky, but I kind of went, no, I'm not going to do that, I'm going to write. So I'd write whatever was there for me, and it gave me this kind of patchwork quilt of my story.
You talk about patchwork quilt, and I just loved what you said about life's magic tapestry. If you'd like to say something about that, Julian.
Well, it is. I think in that comes out of part 3 of the book, which is my insights, largely my insights through the period. And it's really quite interesting that when I published the book, I kind of went, oh no. Shortly afterwards, I kind of went, oh, well, those insights are rather crude. And then I would console myself with, well, hold on there, some people out there will get them. But more recently, I've been coming back to them going, actually, they were spot on. Even then, I knew what was the right direction for me and how that looked. And the magic tapestry thing is really... Katja Simmons said this beautifully last week when I was in Spain. She's like, every thought is already in existence. Every thought. It's like all the threads are there, and all that's happening is there's a weaving going on, and you're part of that weaving. And I love that kind of concept of that. Really makes us into part of something bigger. So in that context, my mum, she was one of the threads, and then when she died or moved out of my life in that way, then that thread ended. It was time to knot that thread off in the tapestry and start with a new colour, which just happened to be a lovely lady called Bec Lealman, and then it's a beautiful way of describing the unfolding. Now, at the time I wrote that, I didn't really have much of an understanding, or as much of an understanding about how life unfolds and how you can trust to it as the way I do now. But it's interesting, I had that sense even then. And the bit that I really like at the end of it is where that section was where I go into, but the tapestry isn't real. It's like a spider's web. You can wipe it away, or bits of it away, whenever you like. It's as solid or as ethereal as you want it to be. And knowing that, back to your tears in the shower thing, to be able to let that part of your tapestry go, but to be with the bit that you're crafting at the moment, that seems to me to be a beautiful way to live. Of course, I like some of the bits of tapestry we keep. Like my mum's story. I really love all that. So I think there are some thoughts that are quite nostalgic, and I'll pay the price for being outside in that area maybe. But at least I see that. I see it's a choice. Yeah. So no, I enjoyed doing all of that, and I enjoyed writing all of it. Some of it just came from like that bit about you. Well, you can wipe it all away. The first part of that piece was easy to write because it makes sense, and you just follow the metaphor, of weaving a tapestry, and you get what you're talking about. But then to take the metaphor beyond that, I think is quite interesting. And there's a funny little thing that I've just come across there as we're talking, or as I'm talking, which is that I love animation, love animated movies, because animated movies allow you to go beyond reality. In fact, their job is to tell the story in a way that is one step at least beyond reality. And again, that to me, that kind of goes, so we're all locked in our reality. Why do we let ourselves do that? Because there is more. There's always more.
Yeah, but we can't always see that we're locked in there, can we?
Yeah. It's back to the fact that really what you've got to do is unlearn some stuff. It's almost like if so what I was doing with my inner compass was pointing myself in the right direction, as Sid Banks calls it, and then I suppose then in the second part of the book, where I'm having all that stuff going backwards and forwards about trying to start a business and all the rest of it, I'm struggling with the fact that the next part of his quote is, you should do nothing. Because I've really felt like you should do something. And there are lots of people out there that feel like they should. Because I spent 48 years doing something. I don't know if you know, do you remember an old Billy Ocean song that goes, when the going gets tough, the tough get going? Do you remember that one? It's an 80s number.
No, I mean, I've heard the phrase, but I hadn't associated it with Billy Ocean. That's interesting.
I don't know if it was it a Dwight D. Eisenhower? I don't know the original quote. I'm not sure, but and it was maybe a Second World War thing. I don't know. Somebody will write into you and tell you who the real quote was, but and about the Wordsworth stroke Tennyson one as well, which I also. But the thing with that. So when in my life before, whenever stuff needed to be done, I kind of had this sense that it was only me that was going to do it. And in my head, this song would come on, and I'd just get on and graft out the yards to get it all done. And I think one of the unlearnings for me has been very much about, I don't have to do that anymore. When I didn't read Michael Neill's effortless success thing for ages, because it's like, how can it be effortless? Hard work needs to be involved here. And that's not true. When you point yourself in the true direction, opportunities just start appearing, and then all you have to do is step into them. So that if there are two doings for me with the principle, one is that point yourself in the right direction and do nothing, and the other one is the bit that you just talked about, which is it's kind of a letting go. It's kind of being okay with, because when you can let go of that, like for me, I don't want to let go of that memory of my mum because I really like it, but actually in some ways it's going to be limiting me from being the true me, the me that I can be. And some of those things are really easy to spot, like, oh, if I drop my going gets tough, tough gets going thing, then I'm going to find it easier to make progress in life. So that's an easy one. It's not easy. I spent 2 years trying, and every time I thought I'd got there, I'd look and I'd see I'd have my hands on the controls again. It's like there's a bit in the book about Chuck Yeager breaking the sound barrier in his X-wing aircraft, and it's like he struggled frantically with the controls, and I suppose metaphorically that's what I was doing. I was struggling frantically with the controls when he didn't have any control over his craft at that point, and he didn't need to have. And once it got through the sound barrier, he was fine. He had got control, what control he needed back, and so that was the kind of, maybe that passage is in that book because I didn't yet have the trust that I have now.
I think that's a key word, isn't it? Trust. When we again let go of the control that we think we have. So actually we've got no control over a lot of stuff that happens outside. Then that kind of acceptance that comes with okay, I'm not actually in control of this. Let's just move forward the way that I think would be. great for me at this moment, and go through the sound barrier, the bumpy bit, when you're hanging on for dear life and it looks like you're going to crash and burn, it's all going to go wrong. And then you kind of go through the boom, the sonic boom, if you like, and then suddenly there's a whole new view. There's just, oh wow, I never thought there could be that. But you've got to trust that it will be okay no matter what, if you like. We put labels bad and good on things. Death is sometimes bad. It just is. And when we stop differentiating that in the old habit of things that we've got as good and bad in our own little worlds, and go just is, the vista where it opens out, and there's a whole new world of possibilities out there. It's rather exciting.
It is a new world, and I was looking at Dean Rees-Evans did a post this morning, The Matrix Part 3. Go and read that on his blog.
I've read it. It's wonderful, and Part 1 and 2 are brilliant too, as well.
But it's about that new, and I wanted to. I think I made a comment on it for him, and because it makes me feel like what should come next is some kind of Alice in Wonderland, Lewis Carroll type thing, because life does turn into something that's a bit like that. It's a bit like what's around the next corner, and if that's not an adventure, I don't know what is. And so to go back to that Jamie Smart conversation in 2011, to change from that place of well, next year is just going to be part of the life sentence, to wow, this is an amazing adventure. What's around the next corner is an amazing transformation in the way I feel about life. It all started with my mum. If she hadn't have been ill and so on, then it would. Maybe I would have got here in another way. I don't know, but it was the kick up the pants that I needed, or the change that I needed to turn that corner, which was great.
And it's what came up at the time, isn't it, Julian? It's you were being busy, having your businesses and running that, and then you made that decision. No, Mum comes first, and stopped, and attention on Mum and being part of her power team, and that could have happened at any stage. And if you hadn't done that then, as you say, there would have been probably another opportunity to, your wisdom's inside of you, and it was probably saying stop, and a physical happening came up that made you go, okay, now I stop, and your wisdom was probably going, oh, thank goodness he's listening at last, and I also think there's that lovely connection that we all have when you just, I think that death is it knocks down barriers, it knocks down pretenses, and like you were saying about the conversation you had with your mum, that's a soul-to-soul conversation. That just knocks all the stuff the stories we have around different situations. You're in this situation and suddenly somebody's been very matter of fact, this is what I want, and you just go into that place of love and know that that's for that person, for that soul, that's the thing for them to do, and there's a great respect there, and I think that's something that people maybe don't often sort of think about when death is inevitable, that there's that space of just being with somebody for however long it is before they're physically not around anymore.
Yeah.
And just a total open and honest space. It's the only way I can describe it, really. And as you were saying about, the moment when somebody dies, there's that 1 minute they're breathing, then there's that kind of, and then the body, even after the person's died, sometimes the body still will do things. But there's that kind of moment, And it's a split second, isn't it, when there's life and then there isn't.
Well, I've got a very interesting story about that actually, because after my mum decided not to continue, basically, we sat with her for 3 days, solid, pretty much. And then we went home at night, and for the first day she was still conscious. For the second day and the third day she wasn't. And by the third day, I think we were getting into, well, is she still there? You know, at what moment is she no longer there? And it was difficult to tell. But the nurses were like, oh no, she can still hear you. Probably, still hear you. And I didn't believe it. By the third day, I just couldn't believe that because she hadn't made any movements, etc. She's just breathing, and we went home that night, and I said to the usual thing to the nurses, which was, you know, if there is something, because we were only living like 20 minutes away, said if there's anything to report or we need to come, you know, because they were like, you can go home and get some sleep, because what usually happens is the breathing changes, and we'll be able to let you know. So every night I said, right, well, just call us up if, and she got to the end of the third night, and we went home. Third day, and we went home, and then I woke up on the fourth morning. Like, I can remember it clearly. It was 7:10, and my first thought was, oh, I didn't get a call, and so we've got another day of going to sit with Mum. And literally within 5 minutes of that, I hadn't even got out of bed at that point, my phone went off, and the nurse said, she passed away 20 minutes ago. So it was like I woke up within 10 minutes. But it was almost like, I got the feeling that it was almost like her saying, you don't need to come for another day, boys. You know, we've done the 3 days. We've been together long enough. So we didn't actually see the moment of her.
Mm-hmm.
But I get a really strong sense that she'd done her 3 days, and that's what she felt was appropriate, and she didn't want to trouble. She was that kind of woman. She didn't want to trouble us with another day of sitting through, or even sitting through that actual moment. She kind of sorted it out for herself. She was that kind of woman, and it was quite. So in living and in dying, she was the same. And I know it sounds strange for me to talk about this so enthusiastically, but I do see there's a lot of some positive in all of that. And I think the thing that I would put to people is that if you get so caught up in your thinking about what ought to be, what should be, what you'd want to be, rather than being there, rather than experiencing that soul-to-soul connection, rather than experiencing that love. Now, I was really fortunate to be there and to be present and listening, and maybe that's something that those situations help you do, because, like as I said, everything clears away, and you've really got no excuses but to focus on what's there for you. Be there with it, and it is, and to my mind, an enormous gift. I mean, the bit of my tapestry with my mum in it is perfect. You know, all the goods, the bads, and the uglies in it is. I wouldn't have it any other way. But there's something else that I think is quite important that comes out of this, all of that for me is, you know, you were talking about not listening to wisdom, and I would have heard it at some point. Well, you see, I think, and in the book it talks about this, the feelings barometer. You know, if you're not using your feelings to guide you, to me, feelings is like, I'm going to use some kind of maths expression now, a first order, you know, term of feedback of like you're off track, you know, you think you're moving in the wrong direction for you. And for me, the next step is you start to get physical symptoms. And I did. I was stressed. A lot of people call it stress, and people get physical manifestations of stress and depression and things like that. They're all physical manifestations for me. And like a second order term, it's like life going, so you didn't listen to your feelings. Let me give you the message a bit louder, And I think if you then live with that, now this is probably a bit challenging, but I think a lot of us then go to the doctor, and the doctor gives us some medication to deal with those symptoms. But it's not. It's like it's not pointing us in the right direction. We're not listening to what it's saying. We're not letting in that it's like you're headed in the wrong direction. That's all it's doing for you right now in your life. And if you don't listen to that, I'm pretty sure now that that's when illnesses like cancer kick in. It's like kind of life going, so you didn't listen to that lesson then, right? I need to bring something a bit more serious into you, and so this sounds very woo-woo, but I think it's not about. I'm going to video a lady on Wednesday who kicked cancer by changing what she called her. She changed her eating, fine, but she changed what she calls her killer lifestyle. In other words, she started moving in a direction that was more natural for her. And in that sense, I think death has a real message for everybody. For people because it is. Some people. My grandfather played out till 92. That's great, but there was a guy that I was an apprentice with who died a couple of years ago, and he was 48. He didn't get to his 50. He didn't get to play his shots, or maybe he did. Maybe he was just doing it the way that wasn't appropriate for him.
Maybe he'd done it all.
Maybe he had. Maybe that's all you need. So that's a. But interestingly enough, I wrote something about that. The going gets tough. The tough get going. That was one of the sections that I wrote, and it never made it into the book. I couldn't find it again when I was collating the book, and I didn't bother trying to rewrite it. There you go. Wisdom working again. It's like you don't need that piece. It's not relevant for you. Don't even bother to put it in there without me knowing it. Yeah.
It's interesting you say that. Just a sort of frivolous note. I've learned that when I lose things now, I just go, oh well, it's temporarily disappeared. It's fine. And I don't even think about them, and they generally turn up. But if I go around, turning the house upside down, or getting really worried about, how could I be so stupid to lose that, and piling a load of old thinking and story and all the rest of it, I got no chance of finding them really. It's just let it alone, and often right in front of your nose or in your pocket. When you thought they're in, well, for me, in the handbag. No, actually, I put them in my pocket. I did it the other day. House keys. Locked the upstairs window. Went to come downstairs. So, just nipped to the bathroom. Went downstairs to open the door to come out to go and see some friends. Keys gone. It took me 5 minutes. I said, "You've got a second pair. Just go and find the second pair." And then into my mind goes, "Well, you put them down when you went to the bathroom, didn't you? Put them on the." I thought on the dressing table there by the bed. Mind clears, and you suddenly see where they are.
For me, that's usually when I put something in a safe place, and I can never remember where that safe place is. Isn't that crazy? But there wasn't. So coming back to the subject, I hope I've answered your original question of how I came to the principles now. Well,
actually, no, Julian. Could you just go through that again?
But there's a lady I met last week who she's only just coming to the principles, but she lost her husband, partner, and she's still. You can see there's a lot of. She wants to understand. She wants to why it happened and how it happened and how to. She's trying to be intellectually connected. Like, I can figure this out, and there's a lot of figuring out that I try to do. Some of it's in the book, but with my mum's death, I never tried to figure it out. It just was, as you so cleverly put it, and I think that's an important thing to get from all of this is, could I go back and change my mum's life for it to not end like it did? No, of course I couldn't. Would it have made any difference if I had tried? Or no, I don't think it would have made any difference either. She lived the life she wanted to live, and it went the way, she was a happy woman. She loved us, we loved her. There was lots of joy and nourishment and whatnot. And then when it was time to end, it ended. So yeah, I think it's an important thing to be able to just be with it, to stop struggling, the letting go, back to the letting go. Because the more you struggle with it, the more it takes hold, the more you have that thinking coming back and again to you, and it's the thinking you don't want, the last thinking you want.
Yeah, it's, you can't change it. It's happened, and to say it has no meaning sounds quite harsh, but actually, it's just an event.
Well, it's the meaning you add.
It's totally the meaning you add, which comes from thought.
But
And
interesting for me, there's a cultural thing where, if you look at Nelson Mandela, when he died, they celebrated his life. That's their way of doing it in the South African black community. And I just thought that was amazing, because it's not what we tend to do in the UK. Everybody tends to get mournful and all the rest of it, and so there's some thinking about how you should behave in that situation, which isn't relevant, I don't think.
It's our culture, if you like. What we're brought up to understand is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And yeah, because we're going to be sad. Somebody's not physically around anymore, and if it's tragic circumstances are shocking, and that's literally a body blow to the people that are left. They've got to struggle, because we struggle to understand it. We're asking the impossible question, why?
Yeah.
Why me? Why this? Why now?
Yeah.
And that can't be answered.
Yeah.
There is no answer to that one. And
but
I
you,
think
but
the more
you, sorry.
Yeah,
you
no, I
can,
was just going to.
you
Yeah.
There's a,
Yeah. Go for it, Julian. Go for it. I'll shut up.
No. But you can either ask that question and struggle with it, or you can be there for those conversations. You can take the joy and celebration of everything. You can look at that tapestry and see how beautiful it was, and even after she's gone, I can still see the beauty of it, and that's maybe why I think she's still with me. Part of that, and so that's why it was kind of important to me. When I don't really know how we got onto this subject, and I kind of went, "Oh yeah, I'd really love to come and talk to you about your experiences with death, hangouts," because I really think there's something really powerful, something really strong, and something really beautiful that comes with that whole process of life ending, and just as much as life beginning, just as much.
So I think you said it earlier, actually, and it's something I agree with. It's a privilege to be with somebody in their last hours.
Was the most beautiful conversation ever.
And yet, for years, I was so terrified of that. of actually being present. Somebody dying, God, doesn't happen in my world. Other people, other people's friends, family, they die, but not in my world. And it took, a bolt from the blue to drag me into the understanding that I was in this as well. And yes, it did happen to somebody very close to me. And that changed everything. Because suddenly I had to stare death in the face. And, oh, I'm not immune. Oh, that's interesting. Could be me next. And it just turned things around for me. And that's why I think it's so important to talk about it, actually. It's, we're all going to get there. The final destination's already been written up. So we don't have to worry about that. It's just going to happen one day.
Yeah.
Nobody gets out of this alive.
That's it. There's a wonderful, and then in a way, there's a wonderful chapter in Michael Singer's book, The Untethered Soul, where he talks about death as your friend, and I kind of like that. The whole, we're so busy. It's like that same with Steve Jobs, the famous Steve Jobs address to the graduation class of whichever university or college in Southern California, and he's there saying, if you were spending today, if you spending today doing stuff you're not interested in, then think about that. He said, I asked myself that question, and if there are too many days in a row where I don't think I am doing something that interests me, then I stop and reevaluate. And I think that the Michael Singer thing goes, so if death arrives and says you've got 24 hours, most people would turn around and go, that's not enough time. And to which death replies, but you've had all those years. And so it comes back to my playing your shots thing. I think there's probably a good reason why, for the first part of your life, you're just playing to stay in. But at some point, why not just play your shots? What's there to lose? The only thing you've got to lose is ending it and not having played your shots. Unless you believe you're going to play again, which I do. So why not? It's a win-win situation.
It is. I think that's a lovely full stop, Julian, there that we've just come to.
No, great. So my next book is going to be well, actually I've written some small books that are just about to get published, but the one after that is going to be called The Misunderstanding, and I think the right way is definitely going to be in the book. Doing things the right way, definitely going to be in the book. But thank you very much for giving me this.
I look forward to reading it. Julian, tell people how they can get in touch with you.
Sure. I run a website called starsofwellbeing.com, and you can go there, sign up for the newsletter. You'll get a weekly letter from me, and it's about living from wisdom. It's about being open to that unfolding and living that life. And that's what I've been doing, certainly since the beginning of 2014, much more actively than ever before. And it's beautiful. It's a really nice way of living. And beyond that, I've got a product called livingfromwisdom.com. You go there, and there are shortly going to be 5 workshops from 4 of the world leading sharers of the principles. So if you want to deepen in your understanding of the understanding, great place to go. Great place, especially right now. It's really cheap because I need to restructure it and change the pricing and all the rest of it. So go now, sign up now. Anyway, where it's working particularly well is for, I'm going to call them, the people who can't readily get to workshops live themselves. Because then they have access to it. And even if you're working with a coach or somebody who's helping you with having a conversation with you about your own deepening your own understanding. It's a great resource to add to that, to give you Dicken Bettinger and Elsie Spittle and Jack Pransky and people like that, and here they're sharing their understanding of the understanding. So that's beautiful. And then, of course, Life Beyond Money is on Amazon. You can buy it Kindle or paperback. Yeah, thank you. Julian modelling it for you. And it really is my intention is I hope it will find some people that will see something in it, and it will start to point them in the right direction towards the inside out nature of reality. And it's not a how-to book. It's really about my journey, what I saw, and where to go next. And I'm already getting some great feedback, which is lovely. And if you've got any feedback about that or about anything that I've discussed today or talked about today, it's julian@starsofwellbeing.com. I'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, Julian. It's been a delight talking to you. And thank you for actually volunteering to come onto the Google Hangout.
I love it. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thanks a lot. And thank you, everybody that's been watching us live, and to those of you that will watch the recording. As Julian said, if anything comes up, then you can get in touch with him, or you can email me at gillian@gillianfox.com. So until the next Dialogues Around Death and the Three Principles, it's goodbye from Julian, and it's goodbye from me. Bye-bye.